and they said, hey, we would like you to speak at this event. I was really humbled. I've been in the egg business all my life. And I know the speakers that they bring in. They're top-notch. They're extremely great at what they're talking about. They've got all the credentials. And I kind of looked at John and his folks and said, what's an HR guy got for you today? How can I help you? And he says, I think you can, because we have a lot of people that call and talk about culture. How do you create culture? How do you, frankly, get culture back online? I said, I thought I might be able to help them a little bit, because in HR, we do have a lot of that experience. We know there's a lot of data that's based in what people expect a culture to have. So I asked the team, I said, what are you looking for? Are you looking for just a straight lecture? Are you looking for a whole bunch of pie charts? He says, no, what can you do? What can you share with them that they can actually take out to the field and start to use? I said, well, there's a few tools that we can talk about. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to share with you about 2 or 3 tools that you can use in the field to help shape your culture. In fact, what you need to start to understand about culture is a lot of times owners and managers lock themselves up for a day or two and they really try to put together a great culture core value proposition. The problem with that is that sometimes that's not what the real culture is in an organization. The real culture in an organization is formed by the day-to-day interactions of the people that they interact with. In other words, their leaders, supervisor all the way up. Well, let's start at the basics. What do people want in a culture? See that big, bold? They want respect. They want respect. Well, we give respect all the time, don't we? Let me tell you something about respect. The loudest form of disrespect is not listening. I want you to think about something. In your life, in your career, think about a time that you were really passionate about something. Something you really had great knowledge of. Something that you really dedicated yourself to. And you went to the person you worked for. And you really wanted to talk to them about it. And they didn't listen to you. Maybe they didn't tell you they weren't listening to you, but maybe they were working on the computer. Maybe they were looking at their clock. Or maybe they do what most of us do when we start to listen to somebody, and that's to listen to see if they're really aligned with us. If they're not, we're going to rebuttal them. Or we're going to cut them off. Now you think about that time that happened to you. Just take a moment. You got it? You thinking about that person, what they look like? You still remember them? And the moment you figured out they weren't listening to you, how did it feel? Yeah, there it is. There's a disrespect, isn't it? So part of what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about how you actually listen. That's one of the tools we're going to show you. What else do people want in cultures? They want clarity. They want straight talk. Anybody ever said to somebody, hey, just cut through it and tell me what you really think? Hey, don't dance around this. I really want to know where I stand. Hey, you just filled me with so much information. I'm not sure what you really want me to do. Clarity, straight talk. They want to know what they should start doing. There's a lot of folks in our industry today that are bright, they're wonderful, they're going to carry the day, but they may not have had as much experience as the person before in that role because the gaps in the generations are wide. They may not know what they don't know. And all you got to do is educate them. What do they need to start doing is a really legitimate question. How about what you need to stop doing? People want to know what they need to stop doing. I try to make this as politically correct as I can. Been doing this a long time. Been in a lot of businesses. I've not been in a business yet where the person in their job could get everything done. It's overwhelming out there. There's less people and there's higher expectations. In my world, we call it 100 pounds of poop in a 10-pound bag. Means you got 100 pounds of poop hitting you every day and you got to figure out what the most important poop to put in that bag to get across the line. And guess how you normally do that? The people that are letting you know that that's the wrong poop. It's called the heat principle. It's better if you can tell them up front and give them feedback. about what they need to stop doing. You know, another thing they want to know, and I find this one the most odd. I was just with the president yesterday with another company. Wonderful young man, very smart, cares very much for his people. I think the 100 pounds of poop in a 10-pound bag was more like 1,000 pounds of poop in a 10-pound bag for him. He was going through a certain tool we have in here for feedback called Start, Stop, and Continue. And he says, you know, I really like this Start, Stop, and Continue tool, especially that stop. Okay, that's good. He says, but you know, that continue tool, that telling people they need to continue, that's just sugarcoating, right? Don't you just sugarcoat that to really tell them what they need to stop doing? I said, sir, with all due respect, you really missed it. Well, what do you mean? Well, what you're going to learn today, and another one of the tools we're going to share with you, is that if there's really good behavior and action, and you don't reinforce it, it is not going to happen again to that same intensity, probably. That is an industrial psychology fact. People want to know what they do well. And because they're always so overwhelmed, and communication isn't that bad, especially with the leaders, they don't do that very well. Now think about culture. The reality of that person. You could have those core values on the wall. You could have owners walk in the door and say, this is what I really believe in. And by golly, I tell you, there's nothing more important to an owner than their core values. Seriously. But how they interact with your people, your leadership, is what the reality of the culture is. They want to be able to make mistakes without getting burned. There's some facts up there. So let's go to the first one. We talked a little bit about listening, right? These are the 3 tools we're going to talk about today. We're going to do it quickly because I got to get you to lunch. On the spot, active listening, we're going to talk about the how, what, and when. We're going to talk about on-the-spot feedback, receiving and giving. And we're going to talk about on-the-spot coaching. How do you do it? I love the listening part. How you do it. Believe it or not, listening isn't going, Listening is really intently situational. For example, there are times when you want to acknowledge. There are times when you want to paraphrase. There are times when you want to empathize. And one of the most powerful ways you can listen is by asking questions. Well, Troy, what do you mean by situational? How do you apply that? That's a great question. You could start it today. Let me give you an example. Acknowledging. Some of you may know this fine gentleman by the name of Bill Bayless. He's a friend of mine. We've been together for a good, Bill, dare we date ourselves, a decade and a half. And he was here today, and I just love this guy. And I couldn't wait to get over and talk to him. I don't know if he felt the same way, but I think he did, because he smiled. As we're talking, he's saying to me, Troy, what are you doing now? I know you got this new business. Yeah, I know. I kind of retired from the MASH office. What a great place to be. Michelle and I moved down to Nashville, Tennessee. We built a house. Wow, why'd you do that? So, well, we did it because as we went down there in Easter, we saw a lot of people carrying a cross, and Jesus is really important to us. And he says, yeah, me too. And we talked a little bit about that. We acknowledged back and forth that we kind of saw it similar. I said, the other thing we're down there for is I drink a little barley Coke once in a while. I'm from Webster City. And you know what? We love country music. Love it. And those two things, Bill and I were talking back and forth, and we were acknowledging each other and how much we liked it. See, acknowledging, and a good example, is when you think somebody might be agreeing with you and you're really listening to them. That's a good example of how that works well. Let me share you an example of how it doesn't work so well. My beautiful girl that I've been married to for 26 years, best thing in my life, she likes to talk. She likes to talk a lot. I do not like to talk. I really kind of just like to hang out. Well, the other day, she was talking a lot, and she's very intelligent. I'm not taking anything away from her, but she's talking a lot about landscaping in the backyard. Now, what do you think I'm doing? I'm reading a newspaper. I'm drinking some coffee. I got eye-to-eye contacts. I know I got to have that. And as she's talking about it, what do you think I'm doing? I'm thinking about the article that I wrote, and I'm going, yeah, baby, yeah, sounds good, oh yeah. And then it hit. Well, then I'm going to go over to all those solar lights. Whoa, solar lights, what are you talking about? I don't want solar lights back there. I want real lights. And I knew I stepped in it. Because I looked over and she was red. She goes, you know, you haven't been listening to me for the last 20 minutes. We've been talking about solar lights. Oops. She was right. That's a bad way of using acknowledgement. So when you start to listen to people, be really careful that you're really listening to them situationally. Use acknowledgement when you're supposed to. Don't use it when you're not supposed to. It can get you in trouble. Now, put it to your business. Think about somebody that comes to you with a really great idea. Or they think it's a really great idea. And you're working with them, right? You're the leader. You're the one that's supposed to be the one that they can rely on. And you're going, because you don't want to hurt their feelings. Or because you really want them to feel like you respect them. But at the very end of it, after going you look at them and say, well, that ain't going to work. That doesn't mean you have to agree with people when you're listening to them. But that's a little misleading, don't you think? Happens all the time. Affects your culture. That core value up on the wall says we're going to do what we say and everybody matters. That cat or kitty at that time does not feel that way. Paraphrasing. Paraphrasing is a wonderful tool. It's one of my favorites. When should you use it? Well, it's when you really want to get a good understanding of people. See, in business, most of us are really good problem solvers. And as we move up the ranks, we're moved up the ranks because we're very good at problem solving. Well, the problem with that when you're trying to listen to somebody is a lot of times, most of us, when we're asked what we think, and it's on the spot, we kind of start talking about all the things that could be out there. Well, it might be this. Oh, but that reminded me and it might be that. And that reminded me and it might be that. And that reminded me and it might be that. Now, what happens to the person that's listening is it gets a little confusing on where they stand, isn't it? And you got to be really careful, again, back to the culture piece, that you're really respecting what they say. So paraphrasing is a great way to say, I think I heard you say this. And you repeat what you think you heard you said, because then they're going to really feel like they're a part of it. They're going to feel like you're listening. And by the way, see, I don't know if you see that up there. This is for you guys to take home. You don't have to agree. It's the biggest stumbling block a lot of people, leaders, have with the 100 pounds of poop in a 10-pound bag. I don't have time, and if I had time, I know how to do it anyway. And by the way, I'm not even sure where they really stand. I get that. But if you remember that first page about I need to feel value, I need to feel like I have my say, you really got to learn how to listen well. Paraphrasing is extremely powerful. Something you want to look at. Emphasizing. Emphasizing is about listening when somebody's upset. Sometimes you just got to set in it. Now this one, a lot of people don't use because they don't have time. Some people feel like they don't have to work with somebody that's maybe not feeling good about life today. Or they had a situation happen and they really don't have time to work with them. They don't pay them to be there and have problems. Well, if you've looked around lately, we're human. And stuff happens. Politically correct way to say it. When things happen to people, especially your best players, if you don't listen to them and empathize with them, take the time out to see how they're doing and give them a chance to cool down, how do you think the rest of that production's going to go that day? Not well. Back to the core values and the culture. Living them? Hell no. And if you're really a hardcore production person, I've been one at times, guess what happens to your production overall? Because your superstars aren't going to believe you really care anymore. Empathizing, active listening is extremely important. The last one, I think, is probably the most powerful, and that's questioning. You need a better understanding of a situation, or you need to guide the conversation. Actually, if you're really good at questions, when you're listening, you can actually guide the conversation, and they think they're a part of it. Because asking questions means they become a part of the solution. Let me give you an example. We were working together, and you came to me and you said, I think we should blah, blah, blah. I might look at you and say, nope, you need to blah, blah, blah. Or let's say there's a problem that maybe I discovered on the farm, and I come up and say, why'd you do that? You should have done this. What's the difference if you walked up to somebody and they knew they made a mistake, and you looked at them and you said, hey, if it was up to you and you didn't do this again, how would you do it? I guarantee if you try that kind of approach, you'll be surprised how many times they tell you probably the correct method and what they learned. And they sure feel a lot better about interacting with you. Like they can go to you, they can make mistakes. They can go to you and you'll tell them. They can be a part of the solution. So listening, situational listening, is something that you can do tomorrow, starting. You don't have to pick all these things, right? Just pick one or two of these and try them out. Oops, uh-oh. Hey, all right. Who's got a question on this before we move on to the next tool? Actively listening. You're all hungry, aren't you? I have a couple of ladies up here I was extremely nice to, and I was buttering them. I actually was quite interested. I said, I'm going to put you on the spot. Who was that over there? Put your hand up. They do it every time. So what's your question on start, or what's your question on active listening? Go ahead. Anything? I'm torturing them. Very good. I told them I would torture them. I did it on purpose, so it wasn't their fault. So it was funny because we were talking about those things. So we're going to move on to the next tool. I'm going to do it again, so be prepared. All right? The next tool is what we call on-the-spot feedback. Start, stop, and continue. So again, in the field, when you're working with cultures and you want to make sure your core values are there, it's important to receive feedback and provide feedback. And I get a question a lot of times on how do you do it? Okay? Well, this is a very simple tool. There's a lot of them out there, but this is a very simple tool. Start, stop, and continue is a very simple on-the-spot tool that you can use to help problem solve, generate ideas, and most importantly, change behaviors. For example, back to what do I need to start doing? As an individual, you could actually go to someone and ask them to give you feedback on, hey, what do I need to start doing to better communicate? What do we need to start doing to make sure that we adhere to our biosecurity? What do we need to start doing to ensure that our core values are being lived and that are real? Most people and leaders that are in environments that are so overwhelming don't take time to ask for feedback and listen to them. Start's a powerful start. You also have stop. The word there that I want you to see is what are the barriers? People get really kind of screwy with stops. They don't like to tell their boss to stop, right? They don't like to put a push onto the owners and say, you need to stop this. But the truth is sometimes it's okay to say, hey, what are those barriers that we're putting in front of you that prevents you from doing day one care? What are those barriers that we put in front of you that maybe prevent us from living our core values? That interaction is so important around the day-to-day of who you are. So you can use the stop and ask somebody to stop doing something. How many people use a stop type of approach for feedback in their current environment? Raise your hand. Okay, there you go. Not too many, right? That's normal. What happens if you do start asking people, what do we need to stop doing to get better performance? Live our culture. Be a better leader. Nobody asked for it. What do you think the response would be if you did? I tell you what, you got them thinking when you do it. First thing, you've opened the door. You've opened the door to them that it's okay to have a conversation about maybe things that we need to stop doing. You know, most of you are in position because you've achieved, you're hard drivers, and you want to drive and be very successful. How many times do you say stop when somebody gives you more and more? Not too many, right? Give me more. And eventually what happens is you get so much it kind of waters down the results, doesn't it? And how does that feel? What if you had a tool like this in your culture and everybody in that culture was supposed to use it? What do we need to start doing? What do we need to stop doing? And that last one, continue, is extremely powerful. What do I need to continue to do to make sure that I'm living up to the core values and culture that I have? You can do this on a daily basis. Not that you want to ask that question every day, but my point is, it's the day-to-day interaction with the individuals. You got to be brave. You got to open it up. I want to see a show of hands when the last time somebody told you how well you did something and they wanted you to continue to do it and give you positive reinforcement. Put your hand up. Get it this week? 3, 4, 5. 5. It's probably one of the biggest tools you can use. Sets up your culture just fine. It's amazing how people don't do that because of timing. And they kind of think, well, that's that soft pedally stuff. No, it's not. Especially if you really put it in the direction that you want to around culture and performance. Had a recent company bring a whole group of people together. This is a real live example. And they needed to, or they felt like their cultural core values of respecting everyone wasn't real enough. In fact, a lot of the employee surveys they were getting back was saying, you don't live your core values. It really upset them, as it does most owners in leadership. Well, what can we do? Well, we actually brought the entire group together. We did several different sessions. And the first thing we did is we had to reset the standard and the expectations. So this is the example of this. This is for a large group of people or several groups of people. And what we did is we sat down and we said, thank you for the feedback. We want to live our culture and core values. And what we're going to do is we're going to ask you, and we're going to hold management accountable for providing and receiving feedback on a weekly basis. And then this is one of the ways you do it. To the management staff that was sitting there, we said, hey, look, you got to provide regular, timely, candid feedback throughout the year, and there should be no surprises at the end of the year. I don't know about you, but I guess there might be a few of you that have been surprised with feedback that you've received over a career with a certain individual. You don't want to be surprised. You don't want your people to be surprised. I know some of those talks are tough, but the truth is, if you surprise them, you're probably not living up to the core value of interaction and giving them respect. So that was the first thing we told those folks. This gentleman that owned this business wanted two-way dialogue because he knew those people had better ideas collectively than he and a couple of his leaders did alone. So he literally looked at his group and said, his management group, and said, I'm going to hold you accountable for open dialogue and timely feedback. I want two-way dialogue. He had a lot of leaders, no disrespect to them, that was just going in and they were problem solvers. People would come up, ask for their checklist, they give it to them, they would go out and do it. Their turnover was 68%. You sat down and talked to those people that didn't have voice. You remember that first page? They had all those things they didn't have. And it had a lot to do with the management team didn't really want to have two-way dialogue. They were very good at what they did and they just wanted to tell them how to do it. So that was the second thing he told them. I'm going to hold you accountable for a two-way dialogue. You provide employees regular coaching for development and growth. Effectively assess and address performance issues. You're going to do that with feedback management team. We're going to start today. Coaching discussions include both the what and the how. Be specific to that. How they do it is what you need to give them feedback on as well. Hold all employees accountable for actions in their department. That sounds reasonable, doesn't it? But here's the thing that was the most interesting in that company. The employees knew all kinds of things that were going on that could have helped the company, and they weren't moving forward. They weren't coming up. In fact, when the owner went down and he started to talk to them about, hey, why did that happen? Why did that happen? Didn't you see that coming? Yeah, we did. Well, why didn't you say anything? Isn't that the manager's job? Truth is they were so disrespected, they really didn't want to help them out. So, what did we do? We had to have employee expectations set too. And what we talked about was Seek and provide effective, open, candid, timely feedback. No laying in the weeds. And we're going to hold you accountable for it. And that owner is in the process today of weekly checking with both sides to see if they're upholding this part of his core values. It's a feedback tool. That's all it is. It's a simple feedback tool. But it's helping him direct and understand and keep his culture and core values real instead of just what's on the wall. I won't go through this piece, but that's rules of engagement. We had to have that, right? Because we had some very strong players in management, and they were strong enough that people weren't going to really tell them the truth. They weren't going to really listen to them. They had to be nameless, and they had to be rankless. They had to be confidential. Yeah, you get the idea. You can fill it out any way you want to. Here's some examples of start, stop, and continue. Receiving while you're actively listening. What should I start doing as your leader that would ensure we are living our culture and core values? Is there anyone in here that wants to take the challenge to do that next week? Nobody. Okay? I would challenge you to think about that. Might be interesting to see what you find out. What barriers do I create that prevents us from limiting our culture and our core values? What should I stop doing? What do you count on me to bring in this role that reinforces our culture and core values? What do you need me to continue doing as top priority? I worked for Ken Mashaw for 10 years. Absolutely loved working with those folks. And something that Ken and his wife Julie did every Christmas was always just stellar to me. And it taught me a lot about core values. Every Christmas, they would go out with Christmas food. They would go to the parties where all the managers were. But then they would take all of that food, and it didn't matter what time at night, usually like 10, 11 o'clock at night, and they'd go down to the truck wash. And they'd sit down, and they'd have a meal with them. Of course, biosecurity was in place, sir. Right? But they would do that with every farm they could in that area, with every truck stop they could in that area. And what they were really doing was saying, hey, what do I need to continue to do? They were also setting the example of their core value. This is what I want you to continue to do. And it took a while, but some of the other leaders started to understand it. They started to participate in it. Every employee survey we ever did always came back, whatever you guys do, don't screw that up. We want you to keep bringing that. Tell the family to keep showing up. It was great. Isn't that interesting? How important that continue was. And Ken used it to influence his other leaders to continue to do it well. Here's some examples of providing feedback. The first one, this is a little bit of how you do it. You need to start doing specific behavior action to support our culture or core values. In other words, what do we need to start doing? But the one I like in here that somebody came up with, a colleague of mine that was in the pork industry, we need to start following day one care procedures immediately. You need help, you are to ask your supervisor or designated day one specialist without hesitation. That's a pretty specific feedback given to a certain team, isn't it? Maybe you've said that yourselves, I don't know. But isn't that interesting how you could use that feedback on the spot to reinforce day one care? Same thing here. Team, we need to stop letting other priorities prevent us from executing our day one care procedures. If you're confused or don't know how to go, or what you're doing to get all the work done, ask your supervisors or your day one care specialist. That's actually a stop that a veterinarian friend that's in the hog business, swine business, actually has been using a great deal with his farms. Because their priorities are so heavy, they've trickled it down that they're supposed to follow, how important day one care is. But they were really letting other priorities get in the way. And there was a lot of great reasons why they were getting in the way. But he had to actually come in and say, here's your stop. Stop doing that. Continue. Please continue your specific actions in following day one care procedures. Your dedication and discipline in maintaining it as a first priority sets the example for all other teams. He actually had an individual that was stellar in this. And he promoted them by not promoted them, but he raised them on a pedestal and said, this is how you do it. Look at the behaviors this individual does. Look at how this individual prioritizes day one care. This is how I want you to do it. It was good for the individual as well. Helpful? It's where you say, yes, no, let's go to lunch. Okay. Moving on. Another tool is on-the-spot coaching. A lot of people talk about coaching today. A lot of people attempt to do coaching today. They probably do a stellar job. There's actually a little research behind it. First of all, what is it? Coaching is a process that provides specific feedback that influences behavior or action. Think about how that impacts your culture. How your people and your leaders coach the individual they're working with is actually their coaching reality. Well, you need to be very clear with expectations. Isn't that in the first slide? Not only the results, but behaviors. You need to be observant. How many times do you, in a leadership role, with 100 pounds of poop in a 10-pound bag, tell somebody to go do it, and you got to rush off to the next fire, and the next fire, and the next fire? Guess what happens? You don't observe the individuals after you told them what to do. You have to be observant so you know how to give feedback. On-the-spot coaching is a response to specific behavior. You want to be as specific as you can, and you want to do it as fast as you can. Now, some people will look at me and say, do I got to do it right on the spot? No, you don't, especially if you don't know what to say. But you don't want it to go too far, too long without addressing it. Because if you do, you kind of lose the flavor and the impact. I had to have one science slide in here. This is human psychology. You see the names at the bottom. Been around for a long time. Set clear expectations. Actively observe. Provide feedback. Do it immediately. Pinpoint to a specific behavior. Tailored to an employer's situation. Frequent, consistent, results-based, and most importantly, sincere. If you're so busy you can't show sincerity, don't do it. It'll damage you worse. And that will ripple through the culture. I threw a lot at you really fast because that's what this program, this presentation was designed to give you 2 or 3 tools. I would tell you honestly, I get this question all the time. Troy, I know all that leadership stuff and all that management stuff is great, but can you give me one silver bullet? Right? Give me the silver bullet. Of course, my response is there isn't a silver bullet, but there's close to one, and this is it. This is an absolute 100% guarantee. If you're out there and you're wondering when you're supposed to get feedback or how you're supposed to get feedback, especially the when part, it's right here. Acceptable behaviors that are not reinforced probably won't happen again to the level that they happened before. That doesn't mean you're out there saying you're giving feedback to somebody that's doing things all the time, but one of the things that I see a lot in this is that I did tell him, thank you, Troy. Great. I told him, job well done, Troy. Great. That's very polite of you, and I think that's wonderful. But what does that mean? If you go and talk to the employee, they're tickled that they had polite response and that they were thanked. But what do they thank you for? Yeah, I really don't know. I think it was this, or it might have been that. Be very specific with that. I'm going to give you a tool on how to do it, but be very specific. You can remember this. You see somebody doing something very acceptable. Stop and go over and give them specific feedback on how well what that did and the impact. The other opposite is true. An unacceptable behavior gets no response from a leader, and it will increase. It will fester. Now we're talking about culture. Don't raise your hand, but how many people have been in or in a culture today that certain things have not been addressed? And the group knows certain things haven't been addressed. And it destroys the credibility of the leadership all the way up to the culture and the core values. If you see an unacceptable behavior, you have to address it. It will grow if you don't. And I know you don't do it always at the same time. I teach this stuff. I teach it, but it's hard to enact it. But if you see that start to fester and you see a repeat behavior come back and it's negative again, that's on you. And that will start to erode your culture that you're creating immediately. You've got to address it. How do you address it? You use a STAR AR process. This is all stuff that you can put in your head. You're some of the best leaders this country has, and I sincerely mean that. This is stuff you can use in your back pocket and in your head. So if I can give an example, I mean no disrespect to the airlines I'm going to talk about. right? But recently, I don't know how many of you know Dr. Clayton Johnson. He and I go way back, and he and I are hunters. And I just love hunting with Clayton. We have done a lot of hunting together. And I had an exciting trip with Clayton about 3 months ago. We were going down to Texas, my first time down to Texas. I couldn't wait. I was thinking about it for months. And let me tell you what happened. American Airline gave me a pretty bad day. Now, there's all kinds of airlines that have good days and bad days, and I'm sure that's one of them. But for this example, I'm going to pretend to tell you what the situation was. I'm going to use this tool to give you feedback as if you were their American Airlines CEO. The situation, unconstructive, was unacceptable behavior. The situation was this, Mr. CEO. I had this wonderful hunt with my buddy. I showed up in Nashville's airport at 6 in the morning. I was supposed to fly out at 7:30. I know things happen. I know there's delays. I know there's mechanical issues. But very frankly, I was there till about 10 o'clock that night. I went through 5 gates. The last 2 gates, they kept telling us they were going to board us. There wasn't a plane, folks. Board on what? Well, it'll be here in 10 minutes. I mean, it was almost a borderline lie. And that was the situation me and several other people were in. Their task, their ground crew task, was to actually help me get through that with the rest of those people. Be courteous and polite, understand there was going to be frustration, and find a way to help us understand that these things happen. That's not what they did. Their unacceptable behavior was literally pulled out a bullhorn on gate 2, and they started to yell at us. And then they kept rebooking us. Gate 3, they rebooked us. Gate 4, they rebooked us. And the crew on gate 4 literally looked at me and several others and said, if you guys would just pick which flight you want, we'll get you there, but we're going to stop booking you. That was so unacceptable behavior. We had no control. They were booking us. The result of that is I really avoid American Airlines as much as I can now. I know they're all good and bad, but if I'm being real, I really try to find somebody else to do that for me. That's the result of that. Mr. CEO, I want you to understand that. And by the way, the actions I did expect is reasonable. I just wanted to be treated with respect and have somebody listen to me. The result, well, I hope that the result I have when you treat me with respect is that I will see you still as a carrier that I come to, maybe first or second instead of last. See how you can use that star AR to give feedback to unacceptable behavior? It's that easy. A lot of times when people are coaching, they don't stop and figure out, they don't make the statement of situation, what they're supposed to do, unacceptable behavior, and the impact of that unacceptable behavior. Make sure you do that when somebody has an unacceptable behavior. Then tell them what you need them to do and the impact of that. The nice piece of this is on the left side, out of the same scenario. I think it was about, I had a rifle. I take that stuff very seriously, man. I had everything locked like it was Fort Knox. And about like the 3rd gate, I'm figuring out we ain't going nowhere today. And I started asking, where's my rifle? What do you think the answers were? Good luck. Good luck, Joe. What do you mean? Well, we're not responsible for this, the TSA. But where's my rifle? Holy cow. The hoops I had to go through to find out where the rifle was just about set me off the edge. And they finally sent me down this baggage place, clear down there. And this poor guy that was probably 400 layers lower than the CEO was there. He was probably 5'1", 5'2", fine young Afro-American man. Skinny, one of my legs is bigger than his. If I fell on him, he would have trouble getting me off of him. That's a joke. We're keeping it real, right? Well, I went in and look, I wasn't rude to him, but you can imagine my presence. I was very, very mad. I said, young man, if you don't find my rifle, I don't know what's going to happen. Let me tell you what he did. He literally looked at me, said, sir, I understand you're upset. If you would stay here just 5 minutes, I'll be right back. He came back in 5 minutes. And if I was giving him feedback, this is what I would tell him. You were very good at what you did with your task. You cared about what I said. You gave me your word, and you followed up. Your behaviors were stellar. You showed up with my rifle. You offered to carry it for me to my car. I didn't need that, but man, that was nice after getting loved all day. And the results was, I thought he should be promoted. It gave me renewed hope in American Airlines. I shook his hand and I thanked him. He had a big smile from face to face. And all the way out, I let American Airlines know that guy needed to be promoted. So I appreciate the time. You're a great group of people. You're very capable. You're not broke. In fact, you're resourceful. You're healthy. You know what you're doing. Think about your culture and how you interact with it. Think about the people that work for you and how they interact with the people in your culture. Keep it real and use these different techniques. I thank you so much. God bless to everybody. Good night.